services and the Freemasons. But first of all, my first question to you is, why do you think that you are a chosen one?
Well, first of all, Lucas, it's very lovely to be invited to speak to you and speak to the audience. Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to talk to you.
Thank you.
To answer the question, I've never actually looked on myself as a chosen one. Some people over the last few years have come to me and said that they would like to experience what I have experienced, and I've said to them, you really wouldn't, because it's not what the glossy magazines say, it's not what people write on the internet. When you've had real experience, there are ups and downs, and perhaps not everybody can cope with what they see. So to answer your question directly, I suppose partly I don't know, but what I've gathered over the last few years, it's literally about if you accept that the physical body that we have is inhabited by a living soul, and the soul never dies, and it reincarnates time and time again on this planet, then if it's anything at all, it's about the previous physical bodies that the soul that's presently in this form has inhabited over the past. And we know that off-planet entities or aliens follow generational families time and time again. So I guess that, you know, this is nothing new. My mother, my grandmother, great-grandmother, I think everybody in this family line of mine had a visit.
And your mother was part of MI5 in England, and your grandfather part of MI6, and he was a Freemason, right?
Grandfather was a Freemason and reached level 33, and then he decided to leave. Two things occurred. One, a journalist started to ask questions of him. My grandfather was a British diplomat. He was a British consul, and he was based in India, but obviously the British embassy in India. So first of all, the journalist was asking questions, and secondly, my grandfather said that the higher up you got in Freemasonry, the more and more people were below you. Think of Lucas, think of a pyramid, and as you climb the top of the pyramid, the base gets bigger. And he said that more and more people wanted him to do something for them, and there was very few people left who could do anything for him. So he bought himself out of the Freemasons, which you can do. My mother worked for MI5, but really she was working for the National Security Agency of the United States of America. My grandfather worked for British MI6, but he was really working for the CIA. So both my mother and her father, which is my grandfather, were working for the intelligence agencies.
It must be the very first time we've ever heard, at least publicly, about somebody who has reached the level of 33 as a Freemason, who actually, well, said no to a future in this whole group, this whole order.
Well, grandfather, for his work, was given the British, these are British medals. Some of your audience may be familiar with them. He was given the OBE, which is the Order of the British Empire. Then he was awarded the CBE, which is a Commander of the British Empire. And then they offered him to make him a Lord, to be Sir and go through. And he turned that down, a knighthood. They were offering him Knight of the Garter. And he told me on my 21st birthday, because he was very old-fashioned, he said, when I was 18, I wasn't a man, but when I was 21, I was. Because when he was a lad, you could only vote when you were 21. And he said to me that he turned down the knighthood simply because they would control him. He said, if I accept the knighthood, they will forever control me. So he refused it. So he had principles, and that's why he decided that the Freemasonry ladder had reached a point where he felt that he had to say goodbye.
But did he experience something that actually shocked him or made him aware that something, well, let's say a little bit sinister was going on when he was reaching that level? I mean, some would suggest that that is actually an Illuminati level.
It's not. The 33rd level is the last of the public levels. It's the last level that is open and obvious. What people do not understand, I'm afraid, is that you could be a level 15 or a level 17, but you could be a member of the Illuminati. In other words, you are carrying a number or a figure which is in plain sight, but in reality you are a member of the secret organization at the top level. So for instance, the Great White Brotherhood, or any of the other magic groups that exist, technically above level 33, but you don't have to be above level 33 to be in this secret group. You could be a new initiate. You could come in and be a Freemason for 6 months, but they fast track you. So the number is it's confusing. You can't go by the number.
That is a very interesting thing, and I'm sure a lot of people don't know about that. So thank you very much for telling us that. Actually, you were a politician. You were working for the labor as a labor counselor in Whitby. And why did you actually decide to go into politics? Because do you actually believe in the political system, or were you made aware of what is actually going on within the political structure afterwards?
Well, I joined the Labour Party in 1979 when I was aware of children walking around the city with no shoes on their feet because their parents didn't have enough money to buy shoes. And I thought that was a disgrace, and I wanted to do something, so I joined the political party. In actual fact, I've been a Labour councillor, excuse me, a Labour councillor in London. I served 2 terms of office as a Labour councillor in a municipal city, and we call it front bench. So I rose to a position at the front bench where I was in charge of a number of committees. And then at the time, the family left and we moved out to Whitby. And then I thought, well, I've done everything now, I'm not going to do it again, but the Labour Party kept pushing me, asked me to get involved. So by this time I'd gone public. I talked about my family being in intelligence, I talked about the aliens, and then I stood for election. And what was very important to me, Lucas, was that I'd gone public and told everyone about my alien experiences, and then I asked them to vote for me. And they did. And that was the biggest wake-up call to the establishment, that they couldn't say, oh, you've lied to people. I made public a good year before I stood, and people said to me, we're not interested in your alien experiences. We like you because you get the street lights working, we get the holes in the roads fixed, we get our trash taken away on time. And that was very interesting for me. So it wasn't an issue for the campaign on the election.
That is very interesting. Why do you think you were allowed actually to have this position and even go out publicly and talk about it? Why do you think that was? That's very unusual.
It is. And it's a very important question. And to answer that, I might need to take a minute or two to explain it. My mother worked at home. She was a typist. She had very good spelling, and her job was to type up documents that had come from Germany, from scientists, and these documents related to crashed UFO craft that had been brought down or had just literally crashed on the Earth. And a group of scientists were tasked with taking out the material, and then the military, this is the United States military, would say to the scientists, what process, what can you do with this? And the scientists would then say, well, we can do this and this. Now, my mother, her job was to type out these documents. They arrived in German, and I'll go into that in more detail later, but they arrived in German and she would type them out. And the British agent who was working with my mother would come in on always a weekend. And this was between, I think, about 1965 or 1966, right up to 1979. And in the early days, I was obviously at school, but every weekend they would come, this security guy would come in. I was never asked to leave the room. And these discussions would take place between my mother and this man, and the document would change hands, and the agent would talk to me. At the time, it seemed normal. Now I'm looking back and I understand this was a deliberately being involved in this. There's more to the story, but what happened in 2012, 2013 was I was invited to one of the most top secret military bases in Great Britain, which is called Fylingdales Space Radar, and we're given a tour. And what I understand is that there is one faction of the military which is good, which is trying to support me, and there's one faction which is bad, which doesn't want me being open and honest. So I get help and I get hindrances. So to answer your question, there are some people behind me trying to get me on my way, and there are others that are trying to stop me. So it depends which one of those groups is in charge at the time.
Would you say that these people who were working with your mother in secret were trying to groom you to become also a secret agent?
No. I think it was very well known in security circles that I was having alien experiences. My mother told me that there were two lists on the earth. There was a list that the military had of every real alien experiencer or abductee. So the military had lists of all genuine experiences. Then they had a second list where the aliens had said that these people belong to us. In other words, saying to the military, you have no jurisdiction over these people, you can't intervene. And I understand, excuse me, that I'm in the second list. So sure, if I park badly, I'm going to get a ticket. That I'm subject to the laws, just like everybody else. But when it comes to these very interesting decisions or off-planet experiences, I'm absolutely convinced that the security services of Great Britain were fully aware of the alien experiences I was getting, and therefore their job was to watch and monitor, but their job was not to become involved.
But just to get back to your story about you being invited to this secret military base, why do you think they invited you to visit this base where other people have no access?
Because when I went public, the British media had been told to try and make me look a fool, to try to rubbish the story, to say that I was crazy. And I did a lot of interviews. I didn't run away from it. I did as many interviews as came my way. And in most cases, the guys doing the interview didn't get what they wanted. And I think what happens is that one arm of the military invited me to the radar base to show the world that actually I was genuine. Because if I was making it all up, if it was all just crazy, why would you invite a crazy man for a 3-hour tour around a top secret radar base? And it worked, because after that, I had people at the BBC phoning me at home saying, I don't understand this. I've been told to give you a hard time. I've been told to make you out to be crazy. But the British military have just invited you round, and I don't understand. And suddenly all of the interviews just dried up. Since then, I've had about only 3 official BBC interviews since that day.
Incredible, huh? So do you think that there was a purpose with them inviting you and actually making it public? What do you think they wanted to gain from going public with you being invited to that place, and of course in association with your very incredible and unusual story?
Well, that's it, isn't it? I mean, I'd said my grandfather worked for CIA, my mother worked for the National Security Agency. I see aliens and flying saucers and reptilians and mantis beings, etc., etc. And knowing all that, they still invited me to the radar base. So it was clearly a message to the media to get off my back. And I went to the radar base and I arrived, and I went with another member of my family who'd also been invited. And we were stopped at the gate. And your audience may not realise that British police men and women don't normally carry guns. We don't carry guns in this country. But obviously the guards around this base all have machine guns. And they're not threatening. They don't point the gun at you. They keep the gun against their chest. So I don't want people to think they're threatening. They're very well trained. And this guy came up to the car and he said, good morning or good evening. Please show me some identification. So the member of my family passed their passport across, and the guard looked at the passport, looked back at the member of my family, looked at the passport, looked back, and then said, that's fine. I went to give this guard my ID, and he just held his hand up and said, oh no sir, and that won't be necessary.
Really?
And then we drove in, and I said to the member of the family, oh, I could be anybody. You know, he's just let me in and he doesn't know who I am. And the member of the family said, oh, come along. They've already been giving you a photograph. They're already expecting you. It's obvious. So we went in, and we got the slideshow, a presentation, a PowerPoint presentation. But I understand that they put a special slide in for me. You get the presentation of the base, what you can do, what you can't do, the rules and regulations. And then, specially for me, they put 4 pictures up, and one was a rocket being launched, and the guy leading it said, we watch these, we check these, and then there was a picture of a satellite, and the guy said, we watch these. Then there was a picture of the Starship Enterprise. And the guy said, laughing, ha, 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 ha. Sometimes, he said, we even see these. Ha, ha, ha. Then there was a picture of a flying saucer, and it would be the one that Bob Lazar made popular when he called it the sports model from Area 51.
The same picture?
Exactly the same picture. And then he said, very, very seriously, we don't see these. And he looked at me. And what he was saying is, please don't embarrass us by asking any questions about UFOs. Don't do that today. That was only for me, and that was very interesting. Then I had the 3-hour tour, and I was presented with, I was the only one, there were 30 of us, and I was the only one not in the military. Everyone else that were Navy or Air Force or military being given the tour. I was the only one given a medal. Now I can actually hold it up, but I don't know if it'll show on the picture here. Do you want me to show it to you?
Yes, we can try and see if that will work. Did they actually tell you not to question them about UFOs and that they saw these things and were aware of them, or was it just something that you felt was not, that you were not welcome to do that?
It's the latter. It was obvious by showing me these 4 pictures that they did not want any questions about flying saucers. That was obvious. There it goes. Now, I don't know if it's going to show up. That's the one side of it, which says it's the RAF. It probably won't come out so well.
Right now it does. If you just hold it still, now it's better.
Okay.
Royal, so that's Royal Face, or what is that?
No, Royal Air Force.
Royal Air Force.
That's the military arm that was responsible for the base. I'm going to turn it over. I don't know how well this will come out. You'll see a pyramid. This is the actual radar base. It's what we call a 3-phased array. So you have a pyramid with 3 discs. You can only see 2 discs. And this is a phased radar. It's a space radar. It looks out into space. So this is number 5. This is number 86. Of a worldwide edition of only 500.
What's the name of the base, by the way?
Fylingdales. It's in North Yorkshire.
All right.
It's the only 3-phased array radar in the world. The Americans have a 2-phased array, but this is the only 3. It looks completely around the Earth. It sees right round the Earth and out into space.
Oh.
3 hours were up. And the guy ran into the control room, we'd been in the control room, and he said, well, we've got to go soon. And in the control room, you have all the screens